Welcome back to the main stage. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome Professor Larry Leifer from the Stanford University. I met Larry 3 years ago when I joined the Hasselplattner Design Thinking Research Program, which he is the co-founder of it. So please help me welcome on stage Professor Larry Leifer. Larry.
Daniela, was that an invitation to start? So I clear my voice and ready or not, hello, sugar. Do you all remember how to gesture? Sugar. That gesture was invented by Maria Camacho's husband when she was in Cali, Colombia. And now they are both in Australia. And I just blanked on the name of the city. But let's go forward with all this ambiguity. We've got a double or triple dose of it these days. So let's go forward one slide, please. So the message in this slide is that decades ago, we thought we were just teaching design. And we've learned over the last decade or two that we actually need to redesign our cultures because we have been in decline, devolution. And now the spirit of the design community is, hey, let's cooperate versus let's collaborate versus cooperate. Let's go one more slide. One of the most common messages I get nonstop is that businesses are preoccupied with getting digital. And digital and AI, all those bad digital guys just want to make you a better computer, not a better human. Slide. This would be a video that should run. I don't know if I can start it or if Daniela can start it. But what the video is showing us is the history of our interaction with technology. And the end of the video says, oh, damn, we've all got a smartphone. And that smartphone has taken over our lives. And we all watch the digital video all the time, and we don't pay attention to humans anymore. That was the intended message of this not running video. We can send it to anybody who's curious. The video was actually prepared for a conference, a worldwide conference of the Design Society at Stanford in 2009. We've degraded ourselves a lot further since then. Slide. I want to remind you all that this isn't a new pedagogy. We're actually celebrating our 54th year of teaching project-based learning at global scale. This bad guy, John Arnold, started the whole thing when he got fired from MIT for trying to teach creativity to engineers. I'm happy to report that Stanford hired the bad guy and I became his first doctoral student. And the bar graphs, while unreadable, tell you that the design paradigm has infiltrated all disciplines at Stanford. So, ready or not, we've invaded the world. Slide. One of the very distinctive things about design paradigm at Stanford is that we have a research team, and we have over 36 years of doing doctoral level research into the nature of design thinking. But for the last 12 years, we've been well funded and helped by the Hasse-Plattner Institute in Potsdam, Germany. And we have a series of now 12, maybe we're on volume 13 of the design research progress reports. Do a slide. Daniela, give me a thumb down if I'm too loud. One of the special features of our community is that we are educating people to be T-shaped. You have your disciplines from standard education. We're trying to reshape you to pay more attention to your behavior. What are you doing with what you know? Next slide, thank you. So what the design paradigm is focused on is shaping behavior in depth, while the rest of higher education is focused on knowledge in depth. Give me a slide. So we're building people teams. They're much stronger than individuals, and it is only through a team that we can actually make anything happen. Each of us can have that big damn idea any moment, but we need a team to implement it. Go for your team. Slide. And then our research has showed us that it's really hard for most people to do this. I'd like to expand on that slide. One of the reasons it's hard for people, and Dr. Michael Lande studied this for several years, is that we ask people to get out of their comfort zone. Wherever you come from, spend some time in creative thinking and learning. Then spend some time on strategic foresight and learning. Then spend some time in manufacturing, make it real. And for sure, all the time you're doing that, keep your engineering skills at play, or whatever your basic skill set is, keep them working. Slide. Next slide, Danielle. So our curriculum has mission statements that take students into all of those 4 quadrants. And what Michael Lande demonstrated or validated through his research is that some teams do this very differently. Slide. This is an example of a team that didn't explore all 4 quadrants, all 4 ways of thinking and doing. They stuck almost exclusively in the design quadrant. And you'll see in a moment that design only doesn't yield much of value to the world. Next slide. this is an example of a team that got into all 4 quadrants, and they delivered the wow result. Real ideas really made to work in the real world with real people. That earned them a wow, and that other team, thanks a lot, folks. Next slide. Now, one of my concerns to the sugar community is that in many of the projects that I've witnessed, there's a tendency for sugar teams to stick in the design quadrant and not get into all 4 quadrants. So I challenge you all to get more credible, build it, and test it with real humans to make sure it's human-centric, not tech-centric or marketing-centric. Slide. You showed a slide earlier that we have teams all over the planet, company teams, university teams. Thank you all for participating in the team of teams. Slide. Sure enough, you have many different universities participating. This is a modest example of universities that have participated over the last 20 years, but it's almost readable, and I think many of you are in these institutions. Next slide. I'm not sure whether the sugar community has gotten to well over 100 different companies in well over 100 different business sectors, but over the last 50 years of ME 310, we really have been all over the map and welcome all these companies to come back again. Next slide. I'd like to focus on our research now and focus on a research methodology called video ethnography. The purpose of this image is to show you that a video camera watches a team at work, and then a group of researchers study that video and share that video with dozens of other researchers. What did you see? What are they doing? Why are they doing that? Next slide. One of the first big findings by John Tong, who first applied this methodology, and John Tong is now the head of user experience research at Microsoft in Redwood City. And he discovered that, I'll be damned, text doesn't count for much. It's the drawing and the gestures that count for most. And so teamwork is predominantly about gestures. Wow, I think we've learned that now in contemporary video, lots of gestures. Next slide. One of the next researchers, Vinod Bhaya, who is with a tech consulting company now, he took an information theoretic point of view to ask, what is the attention and the information use of designers? And he came up with this shocking 7-second rule. And that tells me that all of you in this audience are paying attention to me for about 7 seconds. And then your very creative brain jumps off and pays attention to something else. You may come back every 10 to 7 seconds, but your attention to information is this short, and this study was done on aerospace engineers building satellites for NASA. Next slide. Another of our researchers, still creatively involved at Stanford CDR, Adi Marbagunji, looked at the content of reports that are written. And he looked at the nature of language. And what he discovered that in the progression from December to June, teams that had the most invented language, teams who made up phrases for what they do, like, what the hell is a Bluetooth? And that sort of invented language is critical to getting to wow. And those who use language in conventional format, they delivered the B-axis. Thanks a lot, folks. Adi's still a very busy researcher. Go. Özgür Eris, who's been at several universities, including the Technical University of Delft as a professor, decided to abandon academics and now works for, I just lost his name, the name of his company, but he's the head of innovation at that aerospace company. And what he studied was, how many questions do teams ask? And what he discovered was teams that are delivering wow are asking a hell of a lot of questions, on the order of 40 questions an hour. And sure enough, on the lower left corner of the graph, teams that are delivering thanks a lot, folks, are doing maybe 10 questions an hour. So what kinds of questions? That was the next challenge and the next slide. And what Eris discovered was that two kinds of questions dominated this behavior. On the left side of the questions are the divergent thinking questions. What if, how about, what might we do? And that style of questioning delivers ideas and concepts, the C's. And then to actually deliver on any of that, you have to start asking the deep reasoning questions on the right side of the graph. So given our research, our time, our money, and the market, what shall we do? And that leads from design imagining to real design requirements from left to right. Thank you, Özgür. Next slide. Much more recently, Neeraj Sonalkar's dissertation used video ethnography, the images you see at the left, to look at how teams are behaving. He worked very closely with Malte Jung, who had discovered that the teams that share the most emotions are producing the best ideas. But what Neeraj observed was that I can't tell Daniela to feel differently now, but I can tell Daniela to behave differently now. And so Neeraj created the interaction dynamics language, the symbols on the right, that allow teams to be more innovative by being spontaneous. Next slide. So these symbols actually map very well to the principles of improvisation. And Neeraj, as a doctoral student, went to San Francisco and got himself trained to be an improv theater guy. And so the blue text gives you a hint about what to do. Use yes and, don't block people. Give your partners support, not criticism. Listen to your group and then build on what they do, not on what you think. This is proven to be very powerful. Next slide. The data set ends up looking like DNA data. And so Neeraj took his data set and submitted it to one of our genetic engineering companies in San Francisco to look for patterns in DNA. And we asked them to look for patterns in the behavior. And the first and biggest finding was teams that say yes and versus yes but. And for all you damn Germans, ja aber. So those people who say yes and keep it positive versus the but negative, they're likely to get another idea to show up in their team within the next few seconds, or maybe it's minutes, and that's a very powerful guidance to behavior. Next slide. Now I want all of you in the audience to do what I'm going to do. You put up your hands, and in your right hand, actually I take it back, in your left hand you're holding the science paradigm, and my left hand is connected to my right hemisphere where we do logic, the science paradigm. And in our right hand, we're connected to my left hemisphere where we do improvisation. And so what I want you to do in the next slide is give us both hands and use both of them, because the design paradigms make science usable by humans. And that's the impact we're seeking to have. Thank you for using your fists to hold the paradigms. Next slide, please. And now I want to introduce you to the next big thing in design thinking. And we're calling it the Neurodesign Science Program. I'll say a little bit more about it, and the next slide is an impossible to look at diagram of the history of the evolution of design from 1900 to 2020. Begins with John Arnold, and on the right side it pauses with the creation of neurodesign. So while you can't read the slide, get it in print, and I encourage you to look at all those famous authorship names that are in the slide and the very rich field of philosophy, cognitive science, and now neuroscience that leads us to the next big thing, grow. So we now have a website, and if you go to your web browser and type neurodesign science, you'll get to this website. And John Auenhammer has been the primary architect. This website, it now welcomes all sugar people to do the right thing and help make design better through the application of neuroscience instruments. This is a really big deal, and we can now do neuroscience with humans every day via your damn smartphone and that wearable machine that's on your wrist now. Next slide. So in conclusion, the next new thing to transform our planet, I'm suggesting, is actually called neurodesign. And we are going to redesign the planet and humanity, and hopefully we'll save humanity and save our planet. Sugar, you have a big job to do. Go for it, please. Done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If we can take questions, great.
Yes.
I see captions now.
We have questions from the audience. We have questions from the audience. I will read the questions.
Daniela, I'm not seeing any questions in this format. Question. My response to this question is we've been locked into 9 months because that's the duration of an academic year at Stanford. I'm quite certain that we can make wow happen in 6 months. But to actually get from big idea to building real products and services and testing them with real humans, this actually takes time. And I'll encourage you to give yourself time to do all of those things to establish the credibility of your big idea. Number 2. Let me comment on the 7-second rule that we've always been with 7 seconds, probably for several thousand years. When we were hunters in the jungle, I believe we had to respond really quickly. Oh, those eyeballs going to eat me, or am I going to eat it? So the human species has long held to 7 seconds. And if I have any anxiety, it's that all that digital stuff might actually shorten our attention span. And I don't think that would be good. But I do remind you that the 7-second rule was found with aerospace engineers using all digital design technology, CAD and digital manufacturing. That's where we observe the 7 seconds. And I want to remind you now that when you go to your next TV experiment or watch TV, you might want to realize that the film industry has a 7-second rule, that the camera must change perspective on average every 7 seconds. Daniela might be talking to you for 3 minutes, but she only gets 7 seconds with one frame. Design thinking builds confidence, and that's where we get wow. because you really have to stick with it. The most important word we've found in our research is perseverance. Get started, stick with it, deliver. Thank you, Daniela, and Maya, and all of you. Go for sugar.
Thank you, Larry. Sugar!
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. We just now had the presentation, the keynote speech by Larry.